Hello, brothers and sisters. The title of the message today is Being Led by the Hand of the Lord, the fifth message. I went down to Gwangju City and had dinner at a pastor's house, participated in Wednesday worship service, prayed there, the representative prayer, and I made an appointment to meet the lady next day at Gwangju Gudong Park and slept at my grandpa's house. Even the church was in Gwangju City, but his church was in the outskirts of the city. It was so small, like a countryside church. And pastor's house was in atmosphere, was just like a country house, which was so simple and plain. Pastor's wife was so comfortable lady, and she had a good impression. The pastor's brother came back and forth so naturally. Pastor was so simple and plain person. He was a warm-hearted person also. Next day, I met the lady at a place, and she was putting on a garment of milk color with bookmark pattern. She also putting on a hat. Her impression was so clean and tender. She also, I asked her first, "You're a daughter of a pastor. How did you choose to become a wife of a pastor?" She answered, "Before I did not want to become pastor's wife, but as I participated in a retreat on the mountain and received God's calling and made a decision." Her appearance was so decent and her attitude toward God's calling was so clear and her family background was so good, I had no more question toward her. As we talked about this and that, then she gave a photo which was wrapped with a clean blue paper. But strange thing happened. I thought the photo was the photo that I gave to her before. I also gave a photo from my wallet to her also. I said, "I'm sorry, I do not have a good photo, so I give you a small photo." I thought the reason she returned my photo back to me was her expression of rejecting the marriage with me. Everything was finished up right there. I wanted to leave quietly and said, "Time is almost up," but she followed me and said, "Let's take a rest for a while." I had nothing to say, but I did not have any feeling of sorry or unpleasant, but I thought the relationship with her was ending. But she was saying this and saying that. After a while, I stood up, but she followed me. She said, "Let's talk a little more in a coffee shop." When we sat at the coffee shop, same thing happened again. She seemed that she had something to say. I said to myself, everything was finished. What else can you say? "You have a good courtesy. I came down to Gwangju from Seoul and let me return to Seoul in vain." She's feeling so sorry. She doesn't need to feel that. I walked to the train station to Gwangju, and she followed me again. I bought a ticket and I was about to board on train. She followed me to the platform with an entrance ticket. I took a train to go to Muan, where Reverend Chung was living. I took a train and she waved her hand to the end. At that time, something strange took place. Sun was shining, but at the platform where I was, the rain shower fell suddenly. Other place, the sun was shining so powerfully, but at the place where the train was, the torrential shower was falling. She was waving her hand until she could not see the train until the end. I sat down at my seat. After about 30 minutes, I wanted to see the picture that she returned to me, and I opened up the wrapping paper. She wrapped it up in a beautiful way. Oh my God, it was not my photo, but it was the photo of her. Train was running without knowing the reason. I did not know what to do, and train arrived at Muan after several hours. I told Reverend Chung about the story about her. He burst out laughing. "Wow, That's why you couldn't get married up to now. I became dumbfounded. I asked my senior who got married already, what should I do? He answered, what's the problem? You go back to Gwangju again early morning tomorrow and explain to her in detail. He answered simply, maybe I should do that. We went to bed after we shared some talking. My friend was my senior in everything. He had a date earlier. He got married earlier. Became a pastor earlier. I should have received education from him in advance. But without getting any advice, I went there alone. That caused a serious problem. Next day, I went up to Gwangju with a light heart. I found at the house where she was giving piano lessons, she was sweeping the garden early in the morning. She thought, it's queer, why did you come back? I said, I have something to say to you. She led me to the playground. I explained to her and said I was terribly sorry, but response was so cold. She had nothing to say. I could not kneel down before her, ask to forgive me. She was drastically changed. She waved until the train completely left the train station yesterday, but she said bye and entered her house with a cold heart. Why did she become so cold? Other people explained to me that she thought I did not like her at first. She met another lady, a different lady. I didn't like her either. That's why I returned to her. That hurt her self-respect. She felt so upset. That's why that was the reason. I made other people upset, but I had to return to my daily routine. Suppose everything was finished up there, it could have been much better. But another thing happened. I wanted to solve the misunderstanding because I really didn't mean that. I wrote a letter to her and explained my truth was not that. A few weeks later, she and her father, pastor, came up to our church one morning. She explained to me after I left, she didn't know what to report to her father. She felt so stuffy. One day she received a letter and she took it to her father. Her father said, he means that he wants to marry you. Her father had to take part in the general meeting of his denomination, and she came to Seoul together with her father. Father said, let's go to a certain place, pray to God, and let's engagement ceremony simply. I felt at a loss. I wrote a letter to her not to make a decision, but just want to solve the misunderstanding. But things became too serious. The pastor said simply, we both are pastors. We don't need to follow the tradition, but simply over the cup of coffee and pray that can become the engagement. Please, two people discussed well enough. And he went to the general conference, and we were sitting together at the South Mountain in Seoul. But at that moment, the war was started in our denomination, which lasted for 4 years. The day before they arrived, I received a notice from our denomination that they decided to lay me off. They set up a strategy. They called all the deacons to one place downtown and told their decision, but deacons rejected their decision. The curtain of war was lifted up. Atmosphere became warlike. That happened that night before. I told the pastor, this is my reality now. If you go down to Gwangju, I'll let you know next time. They made up their mind and came up to Seoul, but I told them to go down and wait. The war was not started yet when I met the lady who became my present wife, so she did not know anything. She went down to Chungju, but the lady who came up from Gwangju went down again, inevitably because she saw the war situation. For the time being, I had to concentrate on the war rather than the marriage. My mind was so complicated, I put off my marriage that was rather comfortable. Why did I think like that? I had no confidence about my own marriage. I was skinny, height 167 centimeters, weight 45 kilos. One lung was destroyed because of tuberculosis. I belonged to the family of mummy, and I was just like a walking stick. I try not to think about my reality, appearance, and situation on purpose. My mind was rather comfortable that way. But when I think about my marriage, I have to receive physical checkup. That's why I didn't want to think about marriage. When I was 19 years old, I had to receive the physical examination from the Army. By an Army doctor, I was classified as D degree. I failed to join in Korean Army, and he was murmuring at my back, "Can he really get married?" Well, marriage seemed to be other people's story. I thought marriage doesn't belong to me. I intentionally didn't think about marriage. Even I think about marriage, what can I do? Life can become a sad reality. I did not bring that issue into the door of my own thoughts. I would just watch other people's story. That would be more comfortable. But this burdensome thing is approaching closer and closer to me. I just wanted to neglect the footsteps and stay away from that, but I could not do away with that completely. I sent a letter to the lady in Chungju City. "My reality is so poor. How can I get married?" But she sent me a reply. She tried to encourage me this way or that way. And you have to do is just trust God. Even I sent her a letter with more negative letters, but she was single-minded. She prayed to God, got the clean and clear answer. She was firm. But I could not get any answer. I thought, even I prayed to God, can He hide my body? If I take off my clothes, she will know right away. Can I pray to God, please make her a blind lady? Maybe that's why I could not pray to God. The reality was I was pulled by her by force, and I was dragging unwillingly. I was dragged unwillingly. And on the other side, I was curious about God's will. Strange thing was that I could not hear anything from the lady who went down to Gwangju, but the lady from Chungju came up to Seoul without any notice. I thought, now it's inevitable. The conflict against the denomination was arranged and our team was ready to face the leadership. Then she appeared. The lady from Gwangju heard about the serious problem against denomination, but I could not say anything to the lady from Chungju. I could not make any excuse. I had a feeling maybe the will of God is facing toward the Chungju lady. To the lady from Gwangju, I felt very sorry as men's sentiment. Well, referring to men's affairs, the time is the best cure, but God's affair cannot be dealt with such a way. I thought if I use petty tricks and reject her, the communication with God would be blocked. So I told Chungju lady, I'll marry you. But she accepted it so natural. She was not surprised nor joyous. She seemed to be saying, God's will was already decided. Why did you think this way or that way? Why do you act like a wishy-washy person? Well, it was just like a picture. I just went up to heaven and go down to hell alone without a ticket. I enclosed that photo and sent a letter to HyunRaiLee's saying, I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. No matter how hard I think about it, I found out it is not God's will. I'm really sorry. I wish and pray that you would meet a good man and become so happy. Well, I'm not good at praying, but I was watching what God was doing, paying so much attention. It was a blessing for me. The Gwangju lady came up to Seoul in the wrong time, but Chungju lady came to Seoul on the right time. Who can control this? I knew a big problem will occur, but the notice of expelling arrived just one day before she arrived. How can it become accidental? But Chungju lady arrived after things were arranged and I was a little bit released from the burden. It could not be accidental. My marriage was in the middle of complicated reality. Even though I caused a great confusion, God started the arrangement. He was controlling at the background so that I could follow Lord's will. I'm a type of person who is hesitating for a long time because of this reason or that reason. But once everything is decided, I urge other people to hurry up quickly. In order to take a trip, there are so many things to prepare and pack up, but I force other people to hurry up. Other people complain, you hesitated for such a long time, wasted so much time, and now you shout out loud to other people to hurry up. I went through various things for my marriage. I was so confused. Shall I or shall I not? But as it was decided, I urged her to get married right away. My wife decided so quickly, but she was wasting her time. The decision was made in October, but actually we got married on the 5th of January in cold winter next year. So I passed 34 years and got married at the age of 35. In fact, my wife's family went bankrupt and her family was economically wrecked. She helped her parents for 7 years, but as her father went bankrupt, she became empty-handed. When we got married, I told her, you can come to me empty-handed, but it was a heavy burden on woman's standing point. As she made a decision with God, it was so quick. But the reality was so difficult, it took a long time to move, actually. She made a decision quickly, but told the man who was carrying the load to move slowly. She was quite the opposite. But path was opened up. Her old brother was a colonel, and he was assigned to become a principal of 2nd Army Academy, and was supposed to promote to brigadier general. He was colonel for 7 years. It was the longest colonel in Korea. He was assigned to the principal. Promotion was already a fact. He was so happy. He helped his younger sister's marriage, and that's how January 5th was decided. I believe that as God helped her to make a decision and God took the responsibility, something happened to his job. Her brother went to the Army Academy and he was supposed to get promoted, but there was an accident among cadets during the training period. He let his sister get married, and his promotion that came so near ended up in failure. My mother-in-law loved that son so dearly. Brother-in-law himself knew it so well. In order to pay back to mother's grace, he was able to get principal position of Army Academy as a colonel, where brigadier general is supposed to get. Maybe his destiny was just up to colonel, but God gave him an opportunity to pay back to mother's love. God and my wife discussed together and seek for an appropriate man to use in the world, and God chose her big brother. This is my interpretation. After the wedding ceremony, we went to Incheon for honeymoon and stayed there one night. We prayed together. God, thank you. I didn't think I could get married, but we got married in your grace. If we can get a child, it is 100% your grace. We want to offer that baby to you. My wife became pregnant and had a daughter at her maiden home. I gave a name, Grace, right away. The army doctor said, I wish he could get married. Would it be possible? I could feel God's grace even more real. Grace washed away my shamefulness. I left my denomination and I was living in Yeonhee-dong. I joined in the CCC and assigned to Chungju branch. Before we moved, I got a son and gave him a name, Peace. According to the tradition of our family, I had to use Yong in his name, but I neglect that tradition. The reason I named him Peace was I finished up such a painful war in my denomination for 4 years and came back to the time of peace. I got a lesson. God can never stay there where people fight among themselves. God is dwelling among the peace. I wanted to explain to him later when I named him, why I named him Peace. I wanted him to lead a life without any fighting. For any reasons, if there is a fighting, God cannot dwell there. People always have a certain reason for their fighting. They all came out from their interest or the issue of good and evil. Adam took the fruit and left the Garden of Eden. And issue of world is filled with the issue of interest and good and evil. So God cannot dwell there. Thus God built the tabernacle. He dwelt in the Holy of Holies, and God dwelt in Jesus, who is the tabernacle of character himself during the New Testament time. I fought against leadership because I had a clear issue. But how could God dwell there, where issue of interest and good and evil fight is going on? But both parties insist that God is our side, truth and justice with us, trying to be proud of themselves. The Lord never dwells where people fight among themselves. He's only dwelling in the peace and reconciliation. This is the lesson that I got while I was fighting against our leaders in the denomination, and became the criteria that controlled my life and the behavior rest of my life. Whether I was pushed or pulled, my marriage became the motivation of choosing the path which I take for my future. Suppose I married with the First Lady, I could have entered into the denomination where her brother is the dean of the theological college. I had to follow the instruction of her brother. My position and future could have been guaranteed. Suppose I married with the second lady, I became the pastor of Presbyterian Church naturally. But the third lady, my present wife, did not have any background like those other ladies. I was able to enter CCC, and as I worked there, I was able to meet Watchman Nee, and Taegu Church was able to be existed. What a mysterious thing it is. There were good conditions and paths that were already there, but in spite of the fact I was pulled by a lady who insisted I have decided with God and married with her, and this path was prepared by the Lord. I cannot deny this. Suppose I'm married to one of those ladies who met first time or the second one. Maybe I could not meet Watchman Nee. And even though I might have met him, I could have not followed him wholeheartedly, because those good conditions could have become stumbling block to me. I could have not followed his path with pure heart, even though I might have followed him with a mixed up state somewhere in between. I have seen many people like that. I suppose that in 1970s, I could have not met any pastors who have not read a series of books of Watchman Nee. But at the same time, I have not met anyone who followed his path and his gospel with pure heart. Life has its own unique path. The growth of life cannot be gotten in another path. Even though the life may grow up, but it can be distorted or the color will be faded away. Therefore, Lord led me to the place where there is appropriate condition. I could meet him, and he liberated me to the world where there is no obstacles at all, so that I could grow up freely. In a campus crusade, because of the characteristic of the ministry, I was able to meet watchmen, and I was laid off from campus crusade. I was able to get more freedom and liberation for the growth of my life. Suppose they didn't push me out of their organization because of the limitation of their organization. My life could have been grown up in a perfect way. It's impossible. I could have tasted just part of it, not all. The incident that took place in the denomination, it was too cruel. The process of my marriage was so confused, but the Lord led me along the path that I had to walk. Suppose that incident did not take place, I had no reason for me to join a campus crusade. And suppose I did not marry to the present wife, I could have walked the old path. Lord mobilized the various kinds of people and used them, but they did not know the reason why they had to be used, including myself. But they just played their own role in a faithful way. The way was Jehovah God himself, and only himself was the way. God who called me and led me, it was the path itself. He led me on, even among the severe pain, dizzy confusion, but he was the unique path. All people said that I could not get married, but I got married. People worried that I could not get any children, but I got children. Jehovah God made a high mountain into the plain and prairie, and made a thorn bush into the way. He himself became the way. Amen. Hallelujah. Thank you. May God bless every one of you. Thank you again. Thank you.